The other day, during Flashback Monday, we were talking about this book. So I thought I would come back to it. Just spend a few more minutes. I used to have the whole set and I don't, and I wish I hadn't given it away because they were all first editions and they're worth a couple of pennies now. But if you can, please check out Star Trek recaps on Fridays, and if then episodes on Fridays. If you like this author, then maybe you like that author, and also Flashback Monday. And welcome to the D. Louise book series. I'm Christina K-R-S-T-I-N-A. This is where we read books, we talk about books. There's no special effects here. There's no theme music going on. None of that fancy schmancy stuff here. Just reading books, talking books. And some of you may or may not know that I was having audio and a whole bunch of problems with the videos and audio and all that kind of stuff going on with the books, with the videos, and I had to redo them a couple times, and it was stressing, very stressing. So I wanted to come back to this, just spend a few minutes with it. Because it was part of the Flashback Monday the other day. We were doing it's the one for April. It was done last week or so. I had to do this a couple of times. I've been through these magazines so many times. They are so worn, and I'm starting to tape them all up. I enjoy these magazines to death. I love them. They are awesome. I wish they were still in existence. I did a whole podcast, If Then, on why I like this magazine compared to the others that exist today. None of them do the volume of reviews that this one did way back when. No, except the only place you can get this much and more is Goodreads. But back in the day, before computers, this was your book Bible. Let's see, let me just put this back here for a second. Look, those are all the historicals. And then, mainstream fiction. Look at all those books. And they also did teen. Then we had inspirational. And romantic suspense. They only did a few this month. And we talked about all of these on my podcast the other day. Mysteries. There was a bulk. And paranormals, sci-fi. Each section is color-coded. And then, and I did an if then on these, and I may go back and do another one at a later junction. But look at all those Harlequins. And each one of those is different. One are for doctors, one of firefighters, one is for NASCAR, one is if you want to marry a sheik, one is a millionaire, you know, they have all these different genres. So it's just absolutely amazing. I love this magazine to death. So anyway, during my Flashback Monday, I talked about this book and this article that this lady wrote. And I was talking about the wind and the wind and the blows and the this and the that. So, let's see. The land of painted caves. Look how thick this is. And they're all this thick. They're The Land of the Painted Caves, 4.5 stars. Auel's Children of the Earth series hold a special place in my heart. My very first review, published in Romantic Times 3 in 1981, was for The Clan of the Cave Bear. That's the book that starts the whole series, Clan of the Cave Bear. Yes, ma'am. Do you want to come up here? Come here. She comes back. Oops, 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 oops. So it's a little cold in my hands. Let's see if she comes back. So, oh, I gotta fix this. Oh, this is not working out. See, there's no special effects here. There's no special effects or themes or fancy editing or anything like that going on here. This is easier to do this way. Um, Uh, this book began an incredible series. I remember being completely captivated by Auel's storytelling. Who else could bring the prehistoric era from a museum dioramas to life so beautifully and without any dialogue? Her heroine became a symbol of empowerment to women around the globe. It has only been 30 years since that review and 8 years since the previous volume in the series. For those who have followed Elia, The Land of the Painted Cave is a must read. Alia and her mate Joanna travel from mid-Asia to what is now France, where people who dwell in painted caves come together to work as a unit. Though marvelously detailed description, readers see, feel, and taste every event in Ayla's life. She teaches others to make spears and hunt, drawing on her knowledge of animals, and endures the trials and tribulations of a relationship together and raising her daughter. So it goes on. And there are, I forget, it has I can't show you because it's got the cover in it, but it's got a map in here. And one, two, three, four, five. This is the sixth book. I'm pretty sure there's two more. Clan of the Cave Bear, The Valley of the Horses, The Mammoth Hunters, The Plains of Passage, Shelter Stone, The Land of Panther Caves. I'm pretty sure there's I'm pretty sure there's another one. But this is book 6 in this series. And I just thought we'd do a little reading. Uh the band of travelers walked along the path between the clear, sparkling water of Grass River and the black and streaked white limestone cliff. Following the trail that paralleled the right bank, they went single file around the bend where the stone wall jutted out closer to the water's edge. Along a smaller path split off at an angle toward the crossing place, where the flowing water spread out and became shallower, bubbling around exposed rocks. Before they reached the fork in the trail, a young woman near the front suddenly stopped, her eyes opening wide as she stood perfectly still, staring ahead. She pointed with her chin, not wanting to move. "Look over there," she said in a hissing whisper of fear. "Lions." Joran, the leader, lifted his arm, signaling to the band to halt. Just beyond the place where the trail diverged, they now saw pale, tawny cave lions moving around in the grass. The grass was such effective camouflage, however, that they might not have noticed them until they were much closer, if it hadn't been for the sharp eyes of the Fona. The young woman from the third cave had exceptionally good vision, and though she was quite young, she was noted for her ability to see far and well. Her innate talent had been recognized early, and they'd begun training her when she was small. She was their best lookout. I don't like killing, so we'll skip on. Chapter 2. Chapter 2 is the dead lion. We will go on. Later on, she faced the young man and held out her hands, palm up, in the formal gesture of openness and friendship. "I am Ayla of the ninth cave of the Zelondia, acolyte of Zelondia, first among those who served the great Earth Mother and mated to Jolnar, Master Flint Napper, and brother of Jeharan, leader of the ninth cave of the Zelondi. Formerly I was daughter of the Mammoth Hearth of the Lion Camp of the Manutai, chosen by the spirit of the cave lion, protected by the cave bear, and friend of the horses, Whiny Racer and Gray, and the four-legged hunter Wolf. Those are her companions that travel around with her during the day. It was enough of a formal introduction, she thought. Watching his expression, she knew the first part of the formal recitation of her names and ties was probably somewhat overwhelming. Her associations were among the highest ranked of all the Zendoni, and the last part would be completely unfamiliar to him. He reached for her hands and began his names and ties. I am Mozan of the third cave of Zelondi. He started nervously, then seemed to be trying to think what to say next. I am the cousin of Manville, leader of the third cave, cousin of. Adla realized he was young and not accustomed to meeting new people and making formal recitation. She decided to make it easy for him and extended the formal meeting ritual. In the name of Dani, the great Earth Mother, I greet you. Morzan of the third cave of Zelondi, she said, then added, and I welcome your help. And they handled the lion. Let's get past this. Chapter 3. There you are, Kimmerin, getting up from a stone seat on the ledge in front of the shelter of the seventh cave to greet Alla and Jola, who had just climbed up the path. Wolf followed behind them, and Jola was awake and popped up on Ayla's hip. We knew you had come, and then no one knew where you were. Jola's old friend Kimmerin, the leader of the Elder Hearth, the second cave of the Deloni, had been waiting for him. The very tall, light-haired man bore a superficial resemblance to 6-foot-inch Jolnar with his pale yellow hair. Though many men were tall over 6 feet, both Jolnar and Kimmerin had towered over their other age mates at their puberty rites. They were drawn to each other and quickly became friends. Kimmerin was also the brother of Zelandi of the second cave, and the uncle of Jondi Cam, but more like a brother. His sister was quite a bit older, and she raised him after their mother died. Along with her own son and daughter, her mate had also passed on to the next world, and not long after she began training for the Zelondi. First wanted Ayla to see your horse head, and then we needed to get our horses settled. Jolinar said, they are going to love your field. The grass is so green and rich. Ayla added, we call it Sweet Valley. The little grass river runs through the middle of it, and the floodplain has widened into a large field. It can get marshy in spring from snowmelt, and when the rains come in the fall, but in summer when everything else is dried out, that field stays fresh and green, Kiernan said as they continued walking toward the living space beneath the overhanging upper shelf. It attracts a nice procession of grazers here all summer long and makes hunting easier. Either the second or the seventh cave always has someone watching. It is freezing in my house. Need to keep that wind off. So they go through the introductions again. They talk about the lion again. As they were leaving, a voluptuous young woman with dark brown hair approached holding 2 children in her arms, a dark-haired boy and a blonde girl. She smiled at Cameron, who lightly brushed her cheek with his, then turned to his visitors. You met my mate, Bellador, last summer, didn't you? And her son and daughter, the children of the hearth? Ayla recalled meeting the woman briefly the summer before, though she hadn't had a chance to get to know her. She knew that Bandura had given birth to her 2 born together at the summer meeting, around the time of the first matrimonial, when she and Jolinar were mated. Everyone had been talking about it. That meant that the 2 would soon be able to count 1 year, she thought. Yes, of course, Jolinar said, bestowing a smile on the woman and her twins. Then, without really being aware of it, paying closer attention to the attractive young mother, his vivid blue eyes full of appreciation, she smiled back. Cameron moved closer and put his arm around her ways. Ayla was adept at reading body language, but she thought anyone could have understood what had just transpired. Jolinor found Belladora attractive and couldn't help showing it, just as she couldn't help responding to him. Jolinor was unaware of his own charisma, didn't even realize he projected it. But Belladora's mate was very aware of it. Without saying a word, Cameron stepped in and made his claim known. Ayla observed the byplay and was so intrigued that even though Jolinor was her mate, she didn't feel any jealousy. She did, however, begin to appreciate the comments she had been hearing about him ever since they arrived. At a deeper level, she knew that Jolinor was only appreciating. He had no desire to do more than look. There was another side to him, one that he rarely showed even to her, and then only when they were alone. Jolinor's emotions had always been too strong, his passions too great. All his life he had struggled to control them, and he finally managed only by learning to keep his feelings to himself. It was not easy for him to show the full intensity of his feelings. That was why he never displayed publicly the depth of his love for her. But sometimes when they were alone, he couldn't control it. It was so powerful, it was overwhelming. Uh, see. Ayla, who followed the one who was first back to the group of those who served, the mother. She noticed the most of the locals in Dora were here. In addition to the first, who was also the I have to do this. Zelandoni of the ninth cave, and of course this is the Zeloni of the second cave and the seventh caves were also the Zindoni of the third and the 11th cave. The Zeloni of the 14th had not come, but she had sent her first acolyte. There were several other acolytes. Ayla recognized the two younger women and a young man from the second and seventh caves. She smiled at Majira from the third cave and greeted the elderly man who was the Deloni from the seventh and then the woman who was the daughter of his hearth. Zidoni of the second, who was also the daughter of John Cam, and Ayla had been wanting to get to know the second better. Not many of the Zidoni had children, but she was a woman who had been mated and raised two children, and her brother Cameron after her mother died, and now is a Zidoni. Oh, okay. Keep going. Chapter 4. Anticipation for the summer meeting intensified after the ninth cave returned from visiting the seventh and second caves. Everyone's time and attention was occupied with the hectic rush of getting ready to leave, and the excitement was palpable. Each family was busy with its own preparations, but the various leaders had additional duty of planning and organizing for their entire cave. That they were willing to assume the responsibility and carry it out was why they were leaders. The leaders of all the Zondoni caves were anxious before a summer meeting, but Johann was especially so. While most caves tended to have some 25 to 50 people, some as much as 70 or 80 usually related, his cave was an exception. Nearly 200 individuals belonged to the ninth cave of the Zelandoni. It was a challenge to lead so many people, but Johann was up to the task. Not only had Johan's mother Martharam been a leader of the ninth cave, but Joe Coram, the first man to whom she mated and to whose hearth Johann had been born, was the leader of her was the leader okay. Johann's brother Jolinar, who was born in the hearth of Dalnar. The man Martha mated after Jocan died had specialized in craft which he showed both skill and inclination. Like Dalmar, he was recognized as an expert flint knapper because it was what he did best. But Johann grew up immersed in the ways of leadership and had natural propensity to take on those responsibilities. It was what he did best. The Lizandoni had no formal process for selecting leaders, but as people lived together, they learned who the best person was to help them to resolve a conflict or sort out a problem, and they tended to follow the ones who took on the organization of activity and did well. If several people decided to go hunting, for example, it wasn't necessarily the best hunter they chose to follow, but the one who could direct the group in a way that made the hunt most successful for everyone. Often, though not always, the best problem solver was also the best organizer. Sometimes two or three people who were known for their specific areas of expertise worked together. After a while, the one who dealt with conflicts and managed activities most effectively was acknowledged as the leader, not in any kind of structured way, but an unspoken consent. Ayla's excitement about the upcoming summer meeting increased as the time to leave approached. She hadn't noticed it as much previous year, but they had arrived at Joline's home not long before the annual gathering of the Zelandoni after travel for a year, and she felt excitement and tension enough just meeting his people and getting accustomed to their ways. This year she had also been aware of her mounting enthusiasm since the beginning of spring, and the days passed. She was as rushed and eager as everyone. It was a lot of work to get ready for summer, especially knowing they would be traveling around, not staying at any single place for the whole season. The summer meeting was where people gathered together after a long cold season to reaffirm their ties, to find mates, and to exchange goods and news. The location became sort of a base camp for individuals, and smaller groups would be going on hunting expeditions and gathering excursions, exploring their land to see what changed, and visiting additional caves to see other friends and kin, and some more distant neighbors. Summers were the itinerant season. The Zaloni were essentially sedentary only in winter. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Ayla had finished changing and nursing Jolena and had put her down to sleep. Wolf had gone out earlier, probably to hunt or explore. She just had spread out traveling sleep roll to see what repairs it might need when she heard a tapping on the post beside the drape that closed the entrance to their dwelling. Her home was located near the back of the protector's base, but closer to the southwestern downriver of the living area, since it was one of the newer constructions. She got up and pulled aside the grape and was pleased to see one who was first standing there. How nice to see you, Zendloni. Come in. After the woman entered, Ayla caught a sense of movement outside and glanced up at another construction that she and Jolene had made somewhat further on across the vacant space as a place for horses to shelter when the weather was especially disagreeable. She noticed that Winnie and Gray had just come up from the grassy edge of the river. I was going to make some tea for myself. Can I make some for you? Yes. And they sit down and have some tea. Chapter 5. It was a large group, nearly 250 people, that had started out later that morning. Most of the ninth and third caves, Manvilla and the third cave took the lead. Heading down the slope from the eastern end of the stone shelter, unlike the vegetation of the Grass River Valley, under the third cave where they found the lions, the path from the north edge of the stone porch of the ninth cave led down to the small tributary of the river called Wood River, because its protected valley was usually rich with trees. Wooded areas were rare during the Ice Age. The edge of the glaciers that covered a quarter of the Earth's surface was not very far to the north and created conditions of permafrost in the nearby perigel regions. In the summer, the top layer melted to various depths depending on condition. In cool, shaded areas with heavy moss or other insulated vegetation, the ground melted only a few inches, but where the land was exposed to direct sunlight, it often softened more, enough to allow abundant grass cover. For the most part, conditions did not favor the growth of trees with deeper root systems, except in certain locations, in places that were protected from the coldest winds and the hardest frost. Several feet of topsoil might be thawed, enough for trees to take root. Gallery forests often sprung up alongside the water-saturated edges of river. Wood River Valley was one of those exceptions. It was a relative abundance of both coniferous and deciduous. Trees and brush, including varieties of tree, fruit, and nut trees. It was an amazing rich source and provided a wealth of materials, especially firewood, for those who lived near enough to benefit.
But it wasn't a dense forest. It was more like a narrow valley parkland with opening claims of meadows and lovely glades between heavier wooden patches. The large van traveled northwest through Wood River Valley for about 6 miles of gentle upgrade, a pleasant beginning of the trek, a tributary that caused cascaded down a hillside on the left. When nevertheless stopped, it was time for rest and to let some of the stragglers catch up. Most people built small fires to make tea, parents fed children, and snapped on traveling food. Dried strips of meat or pieces of fruit or nuts saved from the previous year's harvest. If you ate some of the special traveling cakes that nearly everyone had, a mixture of dried meat, ground fine, dried berries, or small chunks of other fruit, and fat, shaped into patties or cakes and wrapped in edible leaves. They were fairly high-energy food, but they took some effort to prepare, and most people saved them for later when they wanted to cover long distances or were stalking game and didn't want to stop to build a fire. Okay. Chapter 6. Ayla was appalled. The 4 younger children were standing around, staring with eyes wide open. She thought they looked frightened. How long has this been going on, Jonah asked. Who built your lodge last year? Mostly Larimar and me, Bologna said, with a couple of his friends after he promised them some armor. Why isn't he building it now? Bologna shrugged. Larimar got into a fight with Mother and said he was going to stay in one of the foul lodges with the men. He took his things and left. Mother chased after him, but she hasn't come back. Ayla and Jonah looked at each other, and without saying a word, they nodded. Ayla put Jonah down on her carrying blanket. Then they both started working with the children. Jonah soon realized that they were using the poles from their traveling tent, which could not be enough to build a lodge, but they couldn't put up the tent because the wet leather hide was disintegrating, and the damp floor mats were falling apart. They had to make everything wall panels, floor mats, and thatch for the roof with materials found locally. Jonah started by looking for poles. He found a couple near the lodge, then cut down trees. Lenona had never seen anyone weave mats and panels quite the way Ayla did, or as fast, but the girl learned quickly. When Ayla showed her the 9-year-old Torella and 7-year-old Ligora tried to help as well. After they were given instructions, but they were more occupied with helping Ligora with 1.5-year-old Laura, with her 3-year-old brother Ganmar. Though he didn't say anything, Bologna noticed as they watched Jonah's techniques create a dwelling of a much sturdier construction than he'd made before. Chapter 7. This is Zeloni, who was first in mixed feelings upon hearing about the new cave. New discoveries of hollows that were likely to be entries to the Mother's sacred underworld were always exciting, but the thought that she might be excluded for purely physical reasons was disappointing. So the idea of crawling on her belly into a small space was not exactly appealing anymore. It did, however, please her that Ayla was accepted enough to be offered the opportunity in her place. She hoped to admit that her choice of a newcomer as an acolyte was already taken for granted. Of course, having a woman with such obvious unusual powers safely under the authority of the Zeloni was a relief to many. That she was also inherently normal and attractive young woman made her acceptance easier. So what do you think? Do you think it's something you might want? You think it's something you might need? We have spent almost 30 minutes with this. We'll give it another chapter, and then we'll close up. When Ayla returned, Wolf was waiting at the edge of the summer meeting camp to greet her. He had somehow known she was coming. Where's Jonah? Wolf, find her for me. The animal dashed out in front of her, then turned to look back and make sure she was following him. He led her directly to Poliva, who was at the camp of the 3rd cave nursing Jonah. Ayla, you're back. If I'd known you were coming, I'd have held up. I'm afraid she's full now, the woman said. Ayla took her child and tried to nurse him, but the infant just wasn't hungry, which seemed to make Ayla's breast ache even more. Has the donor nursed? I'm full too, full of milk. Salona was helping me today, and she has plenty of milk. Even though her baby is eating more regular food, she offered to feed Salona not long ago when I was to Salona about the matrimonial. Since I knew I'd be feeding Jolene soon, I thought that would be perfect. I just didn't know when you'd be back. Chapter 9. Yes, you were right. It wasn't a stillborn baby. The 26 said they were born two together, or would have been, but they were more than born together, they were joined together. Ella remembered the same thing that happened to one of the women of the clan. Two babies joined together with a monstrous result. She had a great sadness for Danella. Let's skip that part. Let's try chapter 10. The matrimonial usually began in the afternoon or early evenings to leave plenty of time for the festivities as it grew dark. The singing or recitation of the mother song had always ended the formal mating ceremony and signaled the beginning of the feasting and other celebratory activities. Ayla and Joan stayed through the entire formal ceremony, and though she was feeling bored before it was over, she would never admit it. She had watched people coming and going throughout the afternoon and realized that she was not the only one who grew tired of the long circulations of names and ties. The repetition of ritual, but she knew how important the ceremony was to each couple, a multiple, and to the immediate king, and part of that was the acceptance by all the Zalonian attendants. Ayla smiled to herself when she heard the rich, full tones of the first singing in the opening verse of the mother's song. Out of the darkness, the chaos of time, the whirlwind gave birth to the mother sublime. She woke to herself, knowing life had great worth. The dark, empty void grieved the great Mother Earth. The mother was lonely, and she was the only. Ayla had loved the legend of the mother the first time she heard it, but she particularly loved the way it was sung by the one who was first among those who served the great Mother Earth. The reciters only joined in, some singing, some reciting. Those who played flutes with their harmonies, and Zelona chanted a fading counterpoint. She could hear John, who was standing beside her singing. He had a good voice, though he didn't sing often, and when he did, it was usually with a group. The great mother lived with a pain in her heart. She and her son were far apart. She ached for the child that had been denied, so she quickly went forth from the life force inside. She was not reconciled to the loss of her child. To woman and man, the mother gave birth, and then for their home she gave them the earth, the water, the land, all her creation. She used them with care, with their obligation. It was their home to use, not to abuse. And that kind of goes in for today, doesn't it? Should we end on that? She has a really good relationship with her animals, and it's a really good story. Long descriptions, long field descriptions. It's really good series. You should check it out. And please don't forget to check out my Flashback Mondays, my Star Trek Next Generation recaps on Fridays, my If Thens on Fridays, and my daily book reviews. We are doing J.O.S. Black and Brotherhood. We are doing the James Patterson's Alice First series. The next book I'm reviewing is When Gods Die. I'm in the middle of it. I should be finished in a couple hours. So we'll see what happens. Please have a good day. Thank you.